For many years now, Russ and Craig have had many wide-ranging conversations with folks from all over the gaming world. This is one of those conversations.
D6G, The Lost Chapter.
Hey, welcome back to Dunkin' Donuts here. Craig, what are you eating tonight?
I'm going old school, man. I have a butternut crunch, and I got two of them because it's that 2 donut deal when you get your iced coffee. So I'm indulging. I'll admit it. I'm a wreck. I'm letting it all go.
Well, you know, you're going to Africa soon, so you got to bulk up.
I do. That's very true.
And is that Geoff in the corner there, Craig? Is that Geoff Engelstein?
Is that Geoff Engelstein hiding
Geoff.
in the corner of Dunkin' Donuts?
What brings you to Dunkin' Donuts in New Hampshire here?
Hey, guys.
How's it going? What are you enjoying there, Geoff?
What do you got there?
What kind of taste?
I've got the classic chocolate glazed and a hot chocolate to go along with it.
Ooh, hot chocolate.
But I don't understand. When I ordered it, they asked me if I wanted whipped cream on top. Like, is that really an option?
Of course it
Do
is.
people not get whipped cream
no,
with their hot?
yes.
Is it? Yeah, is it an option? Yes, yeah.
You know,
I see what you're saying.
I love the people who are like, no, I'm watching my weight. The whipped cream has like no calories. The problem is the hot chocolate. just
That's
put
right.
that
The
out
whipped
there.
cream, at that point,
At that
just go
point.
all in.
Right. It's exactly right. So, anyway.
Great to see you guys here.
Yeah, good to see you. And a triple chocolate. Now, do you dunk your chocolate glazed donut into the hot chocolate?
I do not.
Because that seems like the ultimate.
Yeah, that'd be asking for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's some sort of nuclear detonation, I think, might occur at that point.
Or cause a ripple in the time-space continuum.
So,
Yes.
I wanted to ask you guys.
Wipe out the whole new Star Trek IP. See that tie
see what you did there. Well, Doctor Who would save them, though, so it'd be fine. So let me ask you guys this. Have you guys been watching all these amazing comic book shows lately on television? I mean, it's just
not as many as you.
Holy cow. Well, it just seems like I wanted to ask you this because, you know, here we are, geeks in a coffee shop, and so what do we talk about? Of course, comic books. And I just think it's insane when you think about, I don't know, Geoff, you're about our age, right? So like when we were kids, the only real, if you think about what kind of comic book stuff there was on television when we were kids, it was you either had like the Saturday morning cartoons, like Justice League, right? Which with the Wonder Twins, I mean seriously, or
Wonder Twins Activate,
or Marvin and what was Marvin and was it Wendy? Jane, who predated the Wonder Twins? Do you remember?
I don't remember their names.
It was Marvin.
I do know what you're talking about.
It was Marvin.
I see him. He had the little green cape thing he used to wear.
He had an M.
The blanket.
He was Marvin. I think she was, and there was a dog, and they were like.
Oh yeah, I remember.
There was the obligatory sitcom comic relief in every comic in every cartoon.
And Laugh Track,
right? And Laugh Track. It's sort of like it was because Scooby Doo. Right. Oh, Marvin, you kooky guy. So then they upgraded to the Wonder Twins, and then you had like, and did you enjoy that show, Geoff? At that point,
Justice League, sure,
yeah,
of course.
But if you watch it, have you watched
it
lately? It doesn't really stand up. It doesn't.
No, I would imagine not.
Not really. Do you guys remember
that time period?
Do you remember the? I think it was the Wonder Man. It was Aquaman.
Yeah, sure.
It was, even I was that young,
Superman,
I knew what
Batman, Aquaman, Wonder Woman.
Yes, it was. That was the Justice League, but there was a separate Aquaman show, and it was like it would rotate. So it was like Aquaman one week, and then it was like Flash or something, and it was really like it was back when Aquaman had his little thing, you know, and the whale would come or whatever.
But my personal favorite was the Spider-Man cartoon.
Yes, with the best theme song ever.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which was great because that was in the early 2000s Spider-Man movie. They had a guy in the subway playing the Spider-Man theme song, which was awesome. That was good. There was a series of those shows produced by the same people. There was Spider-Man, there was Captain America, there was Hulk and Iron Man, right?
Right.
And they were all sort of the same sort of campy, fun theme songs, and you could tell it was sort of inspired by the campy live-action Batman.
Yep, incredibly bad animation.
Yes, really bad, like frame by frame animation.
It was all with the repeating backgrounds during the chase scenes.
But we were so excited just to have superhero stuff back then, right? Because there wasn't.
We were happy with that back in the day.
Right,
I was never a big superhero guy when I was little.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I watched a lot of the stuff you're talking about, but it wasn't like a big deal to me. And somehow, like most of the Marvel stuff went right past me.
Yeah,
I had all the comic books. I was a big comic book.
I did not. Yeah. I missed the entire thing.
I had a lot of comic books, but I didn't follow them religiously. So my brother and I just had big piles of them, and we read them. And like I liked mostly Marvel. I mean, I had a lot of Batman and stuff, but it was mostly Marvel. I liked Iron Fist. I had Captain America, Spider-Man. Those are my big ones. Green Arrow, a couple other ones, but it was, but again, I couldn't like quote you plots or anything. My brother was like Wolverine. Anything with Wolverine, he had all those. But, yeah, but I like the shows. And then there were other shows like Geoff, did you ever watch The Mighty Heroes?
Yes, I did.
So who was your favorite
one?
A
guy at my office just brought it up the other day. Just yesterday, he says to me, "Did you know Diaper Man? Have you ever heard of Diaper Man?" And I was like, "Yes, I have."
Yes, I have. Right. And then Underdog. They did a reboot of Underdog not too long ago, but that was
not good.
That was not good. But the original Underdog, I loved. Sure. You know, in the secret compartment of my ring, I fill it with my Underdog Super Energy Pill. See, I even remember when Polly's in trouble, I am not slow. It's hip, 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 and away I go. Underdog.
Wow,
awesome.
Russ.
Yeah, Underdog was the bomb, yo. I'm just saying.
Underdog.
And he had his own comic book, of course, too. But then if you think about like, what did we have for live action back in the day, though, Geoff? Do you remember? What were some of your favorite live action?
It all starts with Wonder Woman for me, man.
Yeah, Linda Carter.
Linda Carter was my first
We
crush.
may be getting close to a little too much information about Craig. I don't know. I sense that.
My first
Oh, come
crush.
on. Tell me
Now, you see, for me, it was
her-
Batman. For me, it was the
her
old
and
school.
Marie, was it not Marie? No, yeah, Donnie and Marie. Marie what? Marie
Osmond?
Osmond, yeah.
Oh, you had a crush on Marie Osmond.
I did, but mainly it was Linda Carter.
All right.
Okay. My first ones was the old Batman.
So you had a crush on Batman?
60s.
Oh, I hate
Well, I don't. We're not just. Are we? Well,
So you like?
I could bring a Catwoman at this point, I suppose, but no. That
Those are the
that
only
was-
episodes
and
that
was in
show I
the
liked.
60s, yeah.
Geoff had a crush on Adam West, I can tell.
Yes.
Yeah,
Who
the
didn't,
original.
though?
The original Batman was awesome. I loved how campy it was, and I
Women
loved.
loved him. Men envied him.
Yes, I loved how they almost intentionally made the things that came out of his Bat utility belt larger and larger on purpose.
Right.
Like my favorite was when he turned around and he unfolds his giant plastic shield. Remember the episode?
The amazing part about that show is when I was a kid, I just, I watched it without irony. I just loved it.
I know.
And then I went back and watched it like 20 years later, and I was like, just amazed at how much fun the guys making that show must have had, because everything was just so completely insane, and they knew it. They totally knew what they were doing. It was not like it was just that was just an innocent time, and they didn't. They were completely bonkers.
Interestingly, I just listened to an interview on Howard Stern. I'm going to drop those a lot now.
No good.
He was interviewing Jerry Seinfeld, because we went and saw Jerry Seinfeld live last week. And so we were listening to the interview, and he actually said that one of his favorite bits of comedy growing up was Batman. And Howard Stern was like, well, is that really comedy? It was like campy. And he said, no, he'd actually talk to the writers, and those guys were like really being counterculture. And so if you go back and look at it, there's a lot of, like, they knew what they were doing. It wasn't just,
Yeah, that show.
I found that intriguing, because I haven't watched it since I was little. And when I was little, I was like, nah, whatever.
No, I think that show actually holds up. You just enjoyed it at a different level.
Exactly.
I've watched it again.
And that's what they were saying.
And it's totally irony, and that's the whole thing. Like, it's like, when he's pulling out and unfolding the shield. So like the bad guys will run into the bar, and there's Batman and Robin by the jukebox, and Robin's like, holy hijinks, Batman, they're about to shoot us. And the guys pull out their guns, and somehow between the guys pulling out his gun, Batman reaches behind himself, unfolds like a foot by foot piece of plastic, starts unfolding it, and they start shooting, and then all of a sudden there's this giant 8x5 bat-shaped plastic shield in front of Robin. It's just hilarious, because or do you ever watch the movie where he's hanging on a ladder from the helicopter?
Yes.
The shark is on his leg.
The bat shark repellent.
Yes,
it's the best
shark
thing ever.
repellent. That's just the best thing ever. So it was. I loved that show. I thought it was hilarious. I still like it.
But there were more serious. The serious superhero shows, I think, were kind of in the 70s. Like Wonder Woman was part of that.
Yeah.
The Hulk, I guess that was 70s, right?
The Hulk was pretty serious. The Hulk was actually pretty serious. A serious drama.
That was it was sad.
It was sad. Every time
I remember it being sad all the time watching that show.
Bruce Banner walking off into the rain every night, and when was he going to solve his problems? It was like it was like as serious as shows got back then, But then there were some that were just still bad. Like the live action Spider-Man was never good.
I don't even remember that. Was there a live action Spider-Man?
There was a live action Spider-Man, and there was a live action Captain America with his little motorcycle, and his plastic shield snapped on the front of his motorcycle. Do you remember that one?
No, that sounds ugly.
Didn't make it long either.
Now, you know what messed up my head going back to the Hulk was the courtship of Eddie's father.
Oh yes,
that messed with my head because to this day I get the two mixed up, and I think, oh my god, it was so sad. Wait, no, that was the courtship.
No, that was the happy ending because finally Bruce Banner was able to calm himself with a small child.
Eventually, with a small child, exactly.
Right. Which
anyway.
Then social services.
Now we have dated ourselves more strongly than we have ever dated ourselves in the entire show with that one comment and the fact that you jumped in there and knew exactly what I was talking about.
Oh, I knew what you were talking about.
Don't make me sing the courtship of Eddie's father theme song.
Oh, don't! I will cry. I will cry.
Let me tell you about my best friend.
No!
Yes, all our young listeners are like, what the hell is going on this show? I don't even know.
I've been wanting to share my courtship of Eddie's father conundrum for years, so I'm just glad to have it off my chest.
In my defense, I watched that show when my dad was stationed in Europe, and there's only one channel, so that was how much choice we needed.
I have no such defense.
So what other shows? Was there any of the serious hero shows you really liked back then?
Well, I think like the $6 Million Man, the Bionic Woman, I think those were kind of superhero shows. I think I'd have to put those in a category.
Yeah. That's fair.
Maybe even Knight Rider, but I think that was getting into the 80s.
Knight Rider's 80s.
How about this? Believe it or not, I'm walking on air. I never thought I could feel so free. How about that?
I had that tape. That was one of my favorite songs back then, and I love.
Me too.
Yes,
I love the greatest American hero. By the way,
for all of the listeners that are under the age of 40, that's the greatest American hero.
Yes,
right.
Which they are rebooting. By the way, did you guys hear this?
Are they really?
That is coming back.
Are they bringing back Robert Culp?
I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think that's possible. But that was a good show, and that was for those who don't remember the greatest American hero. So the premise on this show was there's this regular dude that finds a very tight, basically a superhero outfit left by aliens, which you know
to save humanity,
and he's got
he loses the instructions.
Day one, the instructions are lost, and so he's got this sort of FBI agent friend who's helping him learn how to use the suit. And so every week he finds some new power, basically, that the suit can do for him, from flying to turning invisible to whatever. I'll never forget think of a blank sheet of paper. That was the trick to turning invisible in the suit. But he would always help people, and it was kind of a silly comedy, but at the same time, it
was heart touching.
It had some serious moments, so it was trying to be a real drama evening drama.
Exactly.
And I think it probably has the best theme song of any of these superhero shows. I would have to say,
yes, except maybe for Spider-Man and Batman, which is just
Whenever I'm at kickboxing and we have to start planking, I start singing that, and I know how old the people are based on whether they laugh at me or
with your arms in the air.
Your arms are in the air, and I'm like, believe it or not, I'm walking on, and the instructor starts cracking up and stops. Like that's also my another reason I do it, because he stops making us do painful things for a moment because he laughs so hard. But then all the old people are like, ah, and all the young people are like, what? I don't get it.
So these shows were from a time when the only effect that we knew how to do on television was green screen, right? So you'd see he was clearly like when he was flying,
laying on a table,
that's been covered in a green cloth, and he's being shot so that there's a fan blowing and his cape is sort of flapping around, but they got it on a string,
it's like on threads.
It's on a string, and you can see it like flipping from one side to the other pretty badly. Yeah, so that doesn't really hold up. Neither did the original Superman, of course, either from 50s.
Yeah.
But then but look at it now. Like, have you guys been keeping up? There's almost too many superhero shows.
It's too much now
to watch.
The Renaissance,
it
is.
And it's almost like back then they were kind of, if you look at Batman in particular from when we were kids, it was almost like the ultimate form of camp, and all these shows were at some different levels of camp, trying to out-camp each other. And now it's almost like speaking of grimdark, it's almost like they're all trying to be darker than the one before.
Somber.
It's like, no, we're the hyper-realistic
that I think is
shows.
an excellent point. I think there's a couple of common threads in all this stuff, and we can get into the specific shows. But yeah, they all are really, really gritty and dark. In fact,
take themselves.
My wife is like, why do they have to keep fighting so much in Daredevil? I'm sure we'll talk about Daredevil, but yes. And the other thing is that they're all tweaking that formula. not like a faithful retelling of, what it was. It's all reimagining. It's all, they're trying to be gritty. They're trying to be more psychological. It's not as much about, if you look at the 80s with Wonder Woman and the Hulk and Greatest American Hero and all that stuff, it was very much, the episode, the villain of the week with his superpowers and about the superpowers of our heroes. It wasn't as much about the relationships. It wasn't as much about their internal kind of struggles, which in a sense,
Wonder Woman never went home to drink to get away from her troubles.
Right. Which is, I think, one of the reasons they've been having trouble coming up with a Wonder Woman movie, because it's a different take on a character. And they tried to do, kind of the gritty, dark reboot of Superman.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And I don't know if that was really all that successful.
Well, they're all looking for a new one, right? So probably not.
But the Marvel heroes in particular tend to, they were conceived with, kind of flawed backgrounds. And so they sort of, and they, other than Batman, I think the DC is not as much in that same kind of playing field.
Well, they've been working. It's interesting. So I think, let's start with some of the DC shows. So they have actually a couple right now that are pretty good. They have, I'd say Arrow sort of, is actually a pretty decent show. I'm in the third season now. Is it with Arrow? I think so.
Yes, you are.
And I like the beginning of the first season. Although it felt like a episode of Tomb Raider for a while on the island there, but then I liked it, and then it kind of went downhill for me, and I got back in there. But it very much is he's.
It's a superhero TV show now. When it started, it was like, what's going on?
Well, it was Batman. I mean, I know that it's by DC and it's sort of, but he's got a very similar story to Batman, right?
Yes.
Rich kid goes out, learns ninja powers, comes back. No superpowers per se, but a lot of gizmos, except it's a bow instead of a batarang, right? But. Well, it is, but it's still cool. I mean, I liked it. And he's fighting his internal struggles of being a hero, but also, and they had a cool thing where he was a vigilante and he was so dark that it was like killing people. Like he did have a compulsion. And then they've gone through that whole transition of the character to now, I'm trying to be kind of a really good guy and just killing people and taking the law into my own hands. And they have the whole vigilante theme, and he's trying to, people are dying around him because of what he's doing. So it's got a lot of that going on.
Yeah.
But what I find interesting is, have you guys been following Flash?
No.
So
yes, Flash is the Arrow and Flash are the two probably of all the ones we're going to talk about that I have not seen.
So Flash has been interesting. So Flash was a spin-off of Arrow, where they showed his creation on Arrow. He cameoed there. They've had a few crossovers since the show started. But what's interesting about Flash is it's a lighter show than Arrow. Mm-hmm. So it's still serious. It's not camp, but it's got the things like, for example, one of the techies. So he's a Flash is a police, like a CSI guy for the cops. Basically, he comes in, he does forensics and stuff. So he's a smart, geeky guy. Struck by lightning, blah blah blah, super explosion thing. He's now Flash, right? Meanwhile, he's working with this group of scientists and stuff on other stuff, and they all know his secret identity, and they're helping him refine it. So one of the scientists is constantly, and when there's a super explosion, all these other people now have gotten superpowers, and most of them are ending up being villains. So you have this little set of villains now going through town. And so every time a new villain shows up, one of the scientists, the super geeky guy who's always wearing very, very geeky shirts, gets to name them all. So he's always naming them. They're really sort of silly DC, characters that wouldn't be realistic. So that's how you go, oh, that guy is Dr. Freeze or whatever they call it, right? But it was kind of funny. So they do that. They have that nod to it, and they have that sort of silly camp. But they still have the serious themes as well. But it's a little lighter show than Arrow. I'm actually liking it. I actually am enjoying Flash more than I'm enjoying Arrow. Although the third season of Arrow has really gotten back to being very much a comic book show, because there's like everybody's a hero now. They're all wearing masks. And they're like a whole squad, basically, now in the Arrow. But
I heard kind of mixed things about Arrow, but I've definitely heard good things about Flash. Yeah. And, that's one of the ones. It's just, like you said, there's just the fire hose is open, and it's just so hard to pick and choose what you're gonna go with.
Yeah.
So I would say, though, if you're only going to choose one of the DC shows, by far my favorite is Gotham. Have you guys been watching Gotham?
I started to, and then I stopped.
Jeff, have you watched it at all?
Oh, yeah, I've watched every episode.
Now, are you enjoying it?
Yeah, I was a little bit concerned in the beginning. After the first two episodes, I turned to Susan and I said, I hope this doesn't turn into Batman Muppet Babies.
Right. Because it was that in the beginning. You're right. It was totally like Catwoman the girl and Bruce Wayne as a kid, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my God. And there's Poison Ivy as a kid, and you're like, really?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And, but they've totally gotten away from that. And partly because I think, interestingly, the Bruce Wayne character, the Bruce Wayne parts, I think, are the weakest parts of the show.
Agreed. Yes. Yep.
Obviously the Penguin stuff has been fantastic, and
he is phenomenal.
That guy has just done an amazing job with that part, and especially because Penguin is not really a character that it's really ripe for reimagining, because he's always just been sort of this crazy nebulous character. You never really got a backstory on him, and in the movie version with Danny DeVito, it was just so crazy over the top, and Burgess Meredith and all that stuff. There was it was ripe for sort of this conniving, manipulative person to reinvent the character. So it's been terrific. There's been some parts of it that are uneven, and also they seem to sometimes be super gritty just for super dark just for darkness' sake, and maybe a little over the top at times. But we've really enjoyed it. I think they really come through in a big way.
I'm loving the show as well for the same reasons. I think it's been awesome to watch the Penguin character evolve, and the fact that they can actually, I feel moments of empathy for that character is just really a phenomenal thing they've managed to pull off, and it's really become the story of Jim Gordon, right? So Commissioner Gordon obviously is the guy with the bat signal with Batman, but everybody respects him and thinks he's awesome, and he's this pillar of virtue in sort of the classic Batman comics. But now you've got him in a corrupt city, corrupt police force. Everything's a mess. He's the one cop on the force that actually seems to have his heart in the right place, and yet he's still fighting this really impossible system, and he's fighting himself, trying to take the easier path of sort of becoming a corrupt cop, or trying to hold the line. And when do you work with the criminals to try to do a greater good and all that kind of stuff. So it's really it's more of a cop drama than anything that happens to be set in the Batman universe, with these really wacko villains. And the acting is fantastic. They finally had a cameo of the Joker the other day. And that guy, I don't know, he was somehow channeling Jack Nicholson in some way that I was blown away by. It was just an amazing scene. So they really they're nailing the casting in that show, which I'm really enjoying.
Mm-hmm. So, and it's interesting to kind of, you kind of know where it's ending up, but they're able to do origins without doing them in the same way that's been done a million times before. Exactly. And that's one of the things that I find a little frustrating sometimes about these superhero shows and superhero movies. And Craig, maybe you have some insight on this from a literary standpoint, but it just seems like, and I don't know if it really is the most interesting part, but that origin story, that's always where they go to, and you look at Flash and you look at Daredevil and you look at Gotham, and so many of these are about, even the Greatest American Hero, it was about him figuring that out. I mean, is it possible to do a show where you just like come in the middle and these people are already super and great and they do their thing? I mean, James Bond was kind of like that, right? You never saw James Bond origin story.
No. Technically it has to exist because there's a term for it. Starting in media res.
I know the team. It's called the A-Team.
Yeah, see, there you go. The only origin story you ever got from them was in the opening credits.
That's right. 30 seconds of opening intro.
So I also think that that if you're doing comic books where things are going to be kind of wacky and wild to start with, you almost need the origin story to justify a lot of the stuff that you're going to see.
Yeah.
Like with Daredevil, I've only seen the first 2 episodes of Daredevil, and I've got a very interesting, bizarre relationship with it right now after literally finishing the second episode right before we started recording tonight. But he's in, sweats and a hoodie right now. So, I think that origin story is how you can justify showing all the, if you just jump in and we're supposed to assume that, this is a world where it's okay, this guy's wearing, a red costume, then I think you could do it, but for whatever reason, modern sensibilities, I guess.
But even like Spider-Man, the Spider-Man, I guess before the last one, they felt the need, even though it feels like they just told the origin story, like 2 movies ago, they felt the need to bring it back and do it again.
I agree, Jeff. They don't need to reboot the origins every time. And I think this is why I'm really liking where Marvel's going with I don't know if you guys have heard this term, but they've got a term now called the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yes, absolutely.
And so what that means is when you hear that with a show, it means that it's folding into the current major plot line. So if you think about, Thor, Captain America, the Avengers, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., all of those shows coexist in the same timeline and are internally consistent with the events. Daredevil also is part of that, and so is Agent Carter. Although Agent Carter is a prequel to a lot of what's happening, it ties into the Captain America movies, and she has flashbacks to it and everything else. So what's nice about that now is you can have a show like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. kick off, and you don't have to explain the backstory of those characters because because they're
already been done once.
It's been established in Avengers.
So that's not an argument against having to do origin stories. That's like
I guess I think you need origin stories, but also I just find that it just seems like every time somebody brings back a character, they feel compelled to start and do it from the very, very beginning.
You could have a Thor series kick off now if you wanted to, and have it in the cinematic universe, and not need to tell you Thor's origin story because you had it covered in Thor.
Right. So, and I heard that they're also taking all of the Marvels taking all of these like secondary characters, and they're going to be doing the Defenders.
Oh, nice.
So they're taking Daredevil as the first one of those. Yeah. They're doing like a whole series of these other characters, and they're going to have another spin-off kind of mini Avenger thing, but as like more like a TV event.
Yeah.
Sounds cool to me.
So I'm loving, like, I am really enjoying that part of it. I think it's my favorite part, like watching Daredevil, hearing them reference. Nicole and I are watching the first episode. We've only seen the first episode and a half of Daredevil. Mm-hmm. And I'm loving it. I just haven't had time to watch because I've been traveling for business over the weekend. It just came out last weekend. But what I was nice about it was like they're talking about, ever since the big event in New York.
Yes, yeah.
And I was like, turn to Nicole, what big? Oh crap! They're talking about Avengers. It's like, of course. And then I'm loving the references, like the big. I assume they're sort of like business king, not the kingpin, but business kingpins. Although I think he's coming. Business kingpins who are. Talking about how every time one of those guys in a costume punches a bad guy through a building, our stock goes up, they're the contractors, right? Fixing all the buildings.
Right.
So it's
that's what it is in the beginning. Yeah. Right. I'm further ahead than you guys, but not that much. But yeah, it's these corrupt contractors that are, rebuilding all the buildings that were destroyed by the aliens and the superhero fight in the Avengers. So
I'm digging, I love that reference, and it just all comes together in a way that I really am enjoying. So even though, while some of these shows are stronger than others, I am enjoying the fact that they're taking the time to make them all come together.
Right.
So what do you guys think of, how do you like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. at a high level now that we're in the, I guess, second full season of that?
I started Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. with really high hopes. I started it, and they just really turned me off in the very first episode. I felt it didn't make sense. I didn't like the main female character. Just was incredibly annoying. I don't know. I feel like they got their footing back a little bit in the I guess the beginning of the second season. With the Hydra stuff.
Yeah.
But in general, I don't know. That show, I feel like it's character driven, and the characters aren't very well fleshed out. So they kind of lost me. I stopped watching it. Susan still watches it, but I bailed out on that one.
I'm still watching it.
Yeah, me too.
I enjoy it. But what I feel like it's trying to find its soul, and it wants to be about mutants, but it's not allowed to use the word mutants because of the legal dispute, where the people that are in charge of the Marvel Cinematic Universe aren't the people that are in charge of the X-Men, the X-Men, and the mutant side of the Marvel equation is completely cut off from the Marvel Cinematic Universe side of the equation, and so they have to create like a whole raft of new mutants and a different word because they're not even allowed to use the word mutant. Right. And so I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to give us that part of the Marvel universe without being able to give us which is actually ties in with your whole thing about origin story, because we need the origin stories of these people. Because we can't have like, oh, they're the X-Men, or oh, there's Wolverine. Mm-hmm. Instead, we've got like, there's that guy who can bamf himself around. It's not Nightcrawler, but he kind of has a special effect that looks a lot like Nightcrawler's special effect, without the German accent. And so I think that's where it's kind of like, I think they're trying to be too many things to too many people right now, and I think that's going to hurt them.
Yeah. I can't tell. I feel like they're trying to set up for Civil War. And are you guys familiar with the Civil War story?
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah. But in order to do that, you need mutants, right?
Well, the Civil War was about was really Captain America versus Iron Man about
and
whether
Iron Man wanted to control. He was in favor of
registration,
the legislation about the mutants.
So he was in favor.
So they're central to that whole thing.
He was in favor of the legislation to make sure all heroes had to register and reveal their true identities.
Right.
And Captain America was against that. He felt freedom. I can do it, And so that's what that was about. Now that's part of the mutant registration. It ties into that, but. And that's where that came from. And I think what they're trying to get you set up in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. with now is the whole, now that some of them are, what do they don't call them mutants? And you're right, they call them something else.
They
like
can't.
Specials or something. But now that, well, I don't want to give anything away, but basically people are starting to, that's becoming more of a thing.
Right.
And they're getting
I agree with you 100%. But what they're trying to do, like the mutanthood is central to that concept. And they're not allowed to touch it.
And they also need to slow down on the agencies within agencies thing. I think that needs to stop. That just
yes, the Russian nesting dolls of agencies.
Right. Two's pline, three's too many. What do you guys think of Agent? Did you guys catch Agent Carter?
Oh, I loved it.
Agent Carter was great.
Every episode of that
of the two agent-based shows.
Yes.
Agent Carter was really very well done.
Yes, it really was. I hope more of that, please. That was awesome.
Yeah.
Now, okay, so let's talk Daredevil. We've been dancing around it. What are you guys thinking of Daredevil? I'm only 1.5 episodes in, so no spoilers.
I'm not going to spoil it for you, but I'll tell you that I don't like it, yet I'm still watching it, and I cry at every episode.
I love it, but I'm only 1.5 in.
I will tell you one spoiler. He goes blind.
Oh, Geoff!
Sorry.
I hadn't noticed that.
So, Geoff, you're farther along than both of us, right? You're probably
not too much. Yeah, okay. We just finished the third episode.
What do you guys? What do you think?
I'm a little bit further ahead, but I like it. I like the fact that he doesn't really have superpowers in a way. The way that they're laying it out. Yeah, he hears things a little bit better, and he's got some freaky stuff.
Good smell too.
Yeah, but they're not really. Maybe they bring it out more later, but right now it's just that heightened senses. He's not shooting fireballs, and he's not flying. He's not and he gets hurt constantly,
right?
Really badly, and and so I like that aspect of it because it's just he's not a superhuman. He's just like human plus. Right. A little bit,
and they're going that gritty route again that you were talking about.
They're going the super gritty route, and I like the way they're tying it into Avengers.
That was really
post Avengers was kind of cool, and that was interesting. So I'm willing to give it a shot and see how they go. The fight scene at the end of the second episode is fantastically and very interestingly done. For those of you that haven't seen that yet,
in the hallway, that was beautiful.
Yeah, so they do some really interesting stuff, and he's not, he's constantly on the, getting beat up and in really bad shape. And he's not like just like bouncing out of these fights, and sometimes he shows it's too easy.
Exactly. And watching the second episode, I kept worrying that was going to be the case because he would do something, and I'd be like, oh, he's not wounded, and then all of a sudden he'd be like, and I'm like, oh, he's still hurt. Okay, good. And that fight that you're referencing, without giving anything away, is awesome because the actor's doing such a good job of being hurt while he's fighting.
Yeah,
right.
And and what I loved that they didn't underscore is that what he's doing with all the guns, he's like dismantling the guns while he's fighting them. So you're like, why aren't they shooting? Oh, because he just took apart like every gun he grabbed. Right. But they don't underscore that. You have to like watch carefully to watch him just like pop gun. Like there's just bits and pieces of guns flying everywhere.
Yeah.
Loved it.
I think one of the things impressing the most is this is a Netflix series, right?
Yeah.
Production value is off the charts. I love the intro. I'd say the intro is almost Games of Thronian and like sort of the way
it's pretty good.
Draws the buildings and the music. You're like just drawn right in. And also it's a way of showing. So in the comics, his superpower is that he has more than just good hearing. He has sort of like a radar, like a bat radar type sonar thing going on.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't know if the show hasn't really implied that yet, although it's hinted at it because his ability to see is clearly a little more than it should be.
Right.
And his ability to lie detect, which is right out of the comics, is strong in the show also, even in the first couple episodes.
Yeah.
And so
it's very subtly done.
Yeah, it's subtly done. But if you're a fan of the comics, you're like, oh, he's doing that, kind of thing. It's there to kind of reinforce for the fans. And if you're not a fan, you're like, oh, I wonder how he's doing that. I'm sure they'll explain it in more detail as it goes along. But I'm really enjoying it. I'm impressed by the production values. You guys are right. The fight scenes are awesome. It is darker. So, and dark in a couple different ways. It's dark in that it's a little gory, or it's trying to head in the Game of Thrones direction of like, oh, look, we can show violence because we're not on network television. Right. And two, it's a little more emotionally pulling. It's not as light and fun as like Flash, for example.
No, right?
No, there's a lot.
I tell you, I want to buy stock in the company that makes the artificial blood because they're selling buckets of that.
They're going through it by buckets. So those are the major ones right now.
But it's so great that when you look at like Daredevil just dropping on Netflix like that, it's like boom, here's 13 episodes. I love that. Knock yourself out, and it's not like one of these things where you start watching and then they postpone it for 2 months. It goes off, and then they cancel it after a few episodes or whatever. You've got this chunk, and it's you can watch at your own pace. It's an amazing media time to be around. I'm very happy that I'm enjoying it.
If they can make this lucrative, this is the way things are going.
Well, and it would have been good. Think about that for a minute, right? Because if they've got 13 episodes now and they drop them like that, it gives the show time and pacing. Like you said, Jeff, I don't have to worry about, am I going to catch it? Is it going to be preempted? Like, every Firefly fan will use this as an excuse as to why the show failed, me included, that, Fox kept moving it around, aired them out of sequence, took a couple weeks off here and there. And yet here the show's dropped completely. And even if there's a bad episode, you're like, well, I'll give it one more chance, and maybe if it picks up, you're back into it. And so I think it's fantastic. Netflix has got obviously a few major hits that are beyond. House of Cards is a household word, and that's a Netflix only series. So there's definitely some real successes there, and I hope Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. There's some other great shows on there. So hopefully Daredevil.
Yeah, and it's great when they're all just there.
Yeah.
It lends itself to. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say it lends itself to this new phenomenon of binge watching too.
Yes, it does.
Where normally you have to wait for your DVR to collect stuff. These guys, or to jump into a series like I did with Vikings that's already 2.5 years old.
Right.
But this is like boom, there you go, binge watch to your heart's content, baby.
Yep.
My mother, who is older than me.
Let's keep it with older. Let's be respectful.
Well said, Jeff.
She remembers when they got their first television, their first black and white TV, and what that was like in the late 40s and the early 50s and stuff like that. And she said to me the other day, she says, I need a show to watch, but I will not wait a week for the next episode. I will only watch a show where I can watch the entire season now at home right away. I was like, you've seen this evolution of TV, where you used to have to not only, was it just released once a week, but you had to sit in front of the TV from 8:30 to 9.
Right.
On Tuesday night you had to be there. And now she has just so totally embraced this new model that, she just, it just really struck me that this is the only way she wants to watch TV now is to binge watch stuff.
It's awesome, Jeff, because it's how I get my babysitter. So my mother-in-law will babysit the kids, and she loves House of Cards, and she doesn't have Netflix. So all I got to do is set up the Xbox for her to watch House of Cards all night. And she's like, I'll watch the kids. She comes right over. My kids are now 12 and 11, and they have never. We cut cords when they were very young. We watch shows all on via the various internet methods, and they've never whenever they are at someone else's house and they watch a show with actual commercials in it, with to wait through, they like freak out. They're like, what is this? This is people watch television this way, because it's like it's like 20 minutes of commercials for an hour of television, and they just can't. They just get disengaged. They're like, whatever, I'm going to walk away. This isn't worth my time. And they watch other shows that way, and so for them, they've grown up in a world where that's the way you watch shows, which is pretty interesting.
Absolutely. It's pretty cool. But I would like to give just a little bit, we talked a little bit about the history of these shows.
Yeah.
And one thing that strikes me is when you put this stuff in sequence is that there's, you have these, you had some silly shows in the 80s. You had Knight Rider and you had, The Greatest American Hero and stuff like that. But there's this gap. There's this big gap.
There is. Yeah.
Of like 15, 20 years of no real quality, superhero shows. And I think I would point to, in spite of all its flaws, I really feel that the show Heroes, which I probably should have looked up when that came out, but I really feel that showed that there was a huge potential audience for a dark superhero retelling. I mean, that kind of had all of those elements, and it lost its way later in when it got going. But I think that opened the eyes to a lot of these networks that people want to watch this kind of stuff. That if there's a really good superhero show, that it's going to do extremely well.
I think you're right. I think a couple things happened that brought it back in the 2000s. One was you had a couple of really strong movie series. So you had the Batman series came out in the 2000s, and you also had the reboot, right? And then you also had the Spider-Man movies came out in the early 2000s also that did very, very well as well. And then you also had on network television, you had Heroes, and you also had Smallville.
Right.
And
I guess Buffy was
and
a little
Buffy,
before that,
and I think that sort of evolved. And so I think Arrow, if you look, Arrow is sort of like Smallville, a little farther, a little more evolved, but the same sort of angst. It's still got that angsty thing going on there, and it's sort of. So I think I think you're right. I think sort of during the 2000s, some of those quirky, geekier concepts sort of went mainstream a little more, and I think Heroes went mainstream due to the movies, and now you're seeing them come, and it's a great because it's an unmined, most of the shows are rebooting themselves. So it's kind of, many of these have been done a little in some ways before. There was actually the really bad Flash back in the mid 90s, right? That was just really, really bad. So there's been some attempts before, but I think they finally figured out that if you make them dark or at least adult dramas, you can get some mileage out of them. So, and I think we've had some movies that show how to do it. Also, we should probably point out that the cartoons aren't bad anymore either. Like I watched some of these shows with my kids. Like Ultimate Spider-Man is actually pretty good. I don't know if you guys have seen that. Ultimate Spider-Man. There's an Avengers cartoon. A couple of these shows I watch them with my kids, or my brother's like, "You got to go check this out," and they're actually good. It's not like it's like in the mid '90s there was a Batman Dark Knight cartoon on at primetime, like 7:00 on Fox or something. That was actually not bad. And these are like those where they're actually pretty good stories, pretty compelling. Not obviously not, they're still cartoons, so they're not as dark as some of these shows, but they're pretty good. They're far superior to what we had when we were kids. So, definitely more mainstream there.
Right.
So, do we miss any other hero stuff we need to talk about?
No,
that's it.
Is there anything else on the horizon? Like what's next? Is there any other TV shows like Daredevil that we don't know about, or that's not common knowledge that you guys might know about?
I think I know the movies.
Somebody's typing away.
I was going to look up those Defenders, other ones that they were talking about coming out with.
So Ant-Man's coming out, the movie.
That's a movie.
Yeah. Right.
I don't need to see that.
Here's 4 TV shows. Oh, okay. Yeah, they're doing Daredevil, Jessica Jones.
Oh yeah,
Luke Cage.
Oh yeah,
I remember Luke Cage and Iron Fist.
Oh, that's good because Luke Cage.
I don't know any of those.
No, I know.
I remember Luke Cage and Iron Fist.
I do too.
I don't know Jessica Jones.
Luke Cage and Iron Fist are two of my favorites. Iron Fist is awesome. I had to buy him for Disney Infinity just as a figure because he's that cool. So he's really great. And then Luke Cage is like his best buddy. So that'll make sense.
Right. That's all on Netflix.
Cool. Awesome. That's great. That's great. I'm so glad to see them.
In what kind of schedule? Like next year or?
2015 Jessica Jones. Yeah, let's look at this. Thank here. I don't know. It doesn't say.
I hope they have.
But,
I hope they.
They have it all set up, and like I said, they're going to pull that all together as to a Defenders movie or miniseries or something like that.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I hope they have the crossovers because I love how I do really enjoy when Arrow and Flash crossover because they've done a really good job of the characters of Arrow and Flash are so like they're friends, but they're so different. So Arrow's that dark knight vigilante who will kill people if he has to, and Flash is sort of the the doe-eyed sort of everything's fine, we can save the universe kind of guy, and to watch them work together is hilarious because Flash actually gets frustrated with Arrow, so it's getting a little dark on him. So it'd be neat to see more of those crossovers with like Daredevil and Iron Fist and Luke Cage, and it would be neat to see them kind of have cameos in each other's shows. That'd be great, especially if they're all
David
Netflix.
Tennant is in AKA Jessica Jones.
Ooh, now I got to go research Jessica Jones. I don't know that hero.
It doesn't look like it's. It looks like it's new.
Okay, good.
Judging from the Wikipedia,
is it part of the Marvel universe or is it a whole net?
It is now.
Okay, interesting. So it's kind of like Agent Carter. It's a spin. I mean, she's a side character made into a major character.
Kind of, yeah. Following a tragic end to her brief superhero career, Jessica Jones tries to rebuild her life as a private eye.
Oh, okay, cool. I'll dig it. I'll watch it. I'm loving it. So growing up with someone who watched all those mediocre shows as a kid, I am so pumped to have really all these quality shows now. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's it. So we are in Hero Land. So please, Geoff, thanks again for joining us here on the Lost Chapters and hanging out with us here at the Dunks. And even while your hot chocolate got cold, I appreciate that.
It is very cold at this point. I shouldn't have
they'll
done
nuke
whipped
it
cream. That
for you.
really.
Right.
Okay, I'll have to look into that.
Yeah, they can nuke it right back up for you.
Have them put more whipped cream on top too. It doesn't cost much, and the calories are low. So
okay.
And Geoff, we're looking forward we'll have you back on the main show in about a week here to talk about, well, all kinds of stuff. We'll see what we're going to do when we get there.
Awesome.
All right.
I like
Geoff.
being surprised.
All right, me too.
All righty.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for purchasing a D6G Lost Chapter. Supporting the show helps it grow.